Whoa, boy, do we have a big news update for you before this weekend really officially kicks off. Let's see what we got here. We got U.S. sending Asian deportees into a jungle prison down in Panama. That's kind of crazy. We got 5 public buses were rigged with explosives. We'll tell you how that turned out. We got another underwater cable cut and another Russian ship explodes. Coincidence? I don't know. Seems a little more tit for tat, if you know what I'm saying. But I'm sure it's nothing, just more coincidences. Trump just declared some cartels terrorist organizations that finally came through, and apparently so did Canada. So we'll talk about what that really means and what happens next. France is banning migrant marriages, and Trump declares himself a king. That and more on today's updates. Let's get into it. Welcome to the Poplar Report. I'm Steve Poplar. I'm an accountant by trade, and these are your news updates. What's going on in the world, stuff that the mainstream media won't talk about or always talks about with such a spin, it's hard to know which way is up anyway. All right, friends, we had 5 public buses rigged to explode in Israel. Now, they narrowly avoided catastrophe when 3 of them prematurely detonated. They were in the parking lots overnight, and they exploded in these parking lots before anyone was anywhere near them. Thank goodness. Thank God, really. 3 public buses exploded, and then 2 more devices were found, similar devices on other buses. These devices all seem to have appeared to originate from the West Bank. So probably not Hamas, who is primarily in Gaza, but there are some elements from Hamas over in the West Bank. No word yet on any kind of retaliation. There is still a ceasefire with Hamas in Gaza with Israel, so not sure how this will play out. But as Israel wakes up this morning, that is not something that has anyone happy at all. Public transportation has been shut down across Israel this morning. Another Baltic underwater sea cable has mysteriously broken, this time between Finland and Germany. A whole nother cable just happened today. And this happens as 3 Russian tankers in the last 30 days have mysteriously exploded in the Mediterranean. Because, you know, tankers and stuff always are exploding everywhere. Now, we saw this before when the Saudi and United Arab Emirates tankers were exploding mysteriously, and then Iranian tankers would explode mysteriously, and everyone was there like, so is this like a war thing? And everyone's like, no, don't worry about it. Nothing's happening here. You're like, so explosions happening at the waterline on tankers in ports is normal? That people are just putting explosives on ships? Like that's a thing? And what was really happening was clearly every time a Saudi tanker would get hit, their intelligence services would then make something explode over in Iran. And then Iran would have their intelligence services make something explode in the UAE. And it was just kind of going back and forth, and nobody was talking about it. Well, the same thing seems to be happening here, where we have all these mysterious cable breaks. We have like none of them for years and years and years, and then suddenly it's just like one after the next, after the next, after the next. In the Baltic Sea, they keep getting cut. One after the next, after the next. And then when we go down to the Mediterranean Sea, we see all the Russian tankers and cargo ships, just kind of 3 in the last 30 days. They were all tankers. One of them was a chemical tanker. The other 2 were oil tankers. And then 2 months ago, we had the Ursa Major, which is a Russian cargo ship, mysteriously sank between Spain and Algeria because, you know, ships are always sinking there in the Mediterranean. It is clearly a shadow war going on. Now, anyone who can't see that, I mean, bless their little hearts, but that is what's happening. So anyone who's like, well, when World War III starts, friends, we are in World War III. It's just nations don't want to admit that we're in World War III just yet. Speaking of World War III, this is a whole new level. Trump has now designated 8 Mexican cartels, or cartels that are operating in Mexico as well as other places, as foreign terrorist organizations. Now, on his first day in office, he issued an executive order for the State Department to examine whether or not cartels were foreign terrorist organizations and to designate the appropriate ones to be so. Well, friends, just yesterday, that happened. We got a list of 8. Let's see how my Spanish or Portuguese is here. Tren de Aragua. Remember the apartments in Colorado? That's the most famous gang that has been causing problems inside the United States, a cartel. We got Mara Salvatrucha, Cartel de Sinaloa, Carte de Jalisco, Nuevo Generation. So I guess they got the gang back together, or the band back together. Cartel Unidos. Okay, now that just sounds like it's really targeting the United States here, doesn't it? You know, since we're the Estados Unidos. Well, the Cartel Unidos. Cartel de Noreste and Cartel del Golfo. Okay, now they're just pulling our chain, I think. Trump is going after the Cartel del Golfo. He plays golf, but anyway, seriously, that's the name. And La Nueva Familia Michoacana. Sorry, I am not good with the Spanish anymore. I studied it for a few years in high school, but I didn't learn my cartel names when I did that. All right, so what does this mean? First off, State Department is issuing this because, first off, financial sanctions. This is going to take place. They're going to start levying financial sanctions on anyone who does business with these cartels. So they're going to start going after their money. And if you kind of like, why in the world did we not go after their money before? That's a very, very good question. Someone should ask the Biden administration why not. But apparently they're too busy laundering their own money to stop the cartels from laundering their money. So financial sanctions, and surprisingly enough here, Canada has also sanctioned 7 of those cartels for fentanyl production and smuggling. And Canada is joining in on the financial sanctions. So that's okay. Also, now the U.S. military has its use of force authorization under the global war of terrorism. The global war on terrorism allowed us to basically do drone strikes in Somalia, Yemen, wherever else we felt like doing it. If we found a terrorist, we could drop an explosive on their heads into their Jeep. Well, that also works for this too. U.S. Special Operations communities can target and attack individuals in these cartels, no matter where they are. If they're in Mexico, if they're in the United States, we can go after these people. They're terrorists, and our military can engage them. Now, there are limits to what they can do in the United States, but right across the border in Mexico, they're technically allowed to do whatever they want to, as long as the president allows them to do that. They don't need congressional authority because they've already given that back in 2001. Isn't that fantastic? I'm sure that's exactly what the legislation's intent was back when it got approved in the first place, to go after cartels. Well, this isn't just me speculating either. The U.S. Army 7th Special Forces Group actually deployed last month on a training mission to Campeche, Mexico. They're already in Mexico. They've been training for something. Now you're going to see what they've been training for. Now the 7th Special Forces Group could have other components attached to it. We could see SEAL Team 6 attached to them. We could see Delta Force attached to them. We could see other specialized units attached to them. The United States military has moved towards having these brigades that can be composed of different components as is needed for the mission requirement. And this is a fairly unique mission requirement. So we may see a fairly unique unit kind of built out in Mexico, and we may see multiple different bases operating in Mexico to essentially wage war against these cartels, which could be a new Mexican war that we haven't seen in anything like in a long time. All right, moving over to Eastern Europe. And, the Trump administration, Trump has called the Eastern European conflict president, Mr. Z, a dictator, which is why the peace terms and the discussions demand an election to take place in that country, which hasn't taken place in a while. They've been suspended indefinitely. Also explains why he wasn't invited to the peace talks, because he is not considered to be the legitimate ruler or representative of that country. He represents the $300 billion plus that came in from Europe and the United States. Those $300 billion he represents, not so much the remaining 38 million people in his own country. That is what we call anti-democracy. All right, moving over to France. France bans marriage for undocumented migrants. That's an interesting one. Basically, the French government won't allow people to marry who aren't there legally. So you can't actually get any government services like a marriage certificate if you're not there legally. So you can't marry a French national. You can't marry another undocumented person. You can't marry someone other than you need to leave the country and go somewhere else to get that marriage taken care of. That is something that we really should be seeing in the United States as well. We should see that states only allow marriages between people who are legally present in the United States. Why should they be giving any services? Now, we just had an executive order from the President of the United States. President Trump has issued an executive order stripping anyone who is inside the United States illegally of any benefits from the federal government. They should not be getting any Social Security, should not be getting any of these other things. And of course, the woke people and Democrats are all out there saying, well, they're not getting any of those things anyway, which is like, well, then why are you upset, right? If they're not supposed to be getting them and we're saying that they're not going to get any, well, then how does that make people upset? It makes them upset because people are getting them. That's the problem. And we need to purge all the 300-plus-year-olds that are in the systems and get them out of the system. Now, when we see the millions and millions of people that are over the age of 150 in the system, over the age of 150, not 150, because we got these people saying, well, the system defaults to 1875 if they have no data. It's like, okay, yeah, but what about all the people with the date of births like before 1875 and just after 1875? Like it's not like they're all like saying 1875 on there. It's like 1876, 1877. It's like, I'm sorry, but your little default code doesn't make sense at all. That's just, more gaslighting that's happening, right? So we got all those people in the system. Now, it doesn't mean that they're all getting checks, okay? Just because they're in the system and marked as alive doesn't mean that they're actually getting checks from the Social Security Administration. But they shouldn't be in the system as alive when they clearly are not alive. They're clearly either fraudulent or they are errors, or they are, and if they're errors, what other errors that are less glaring are in the system as well? Lots of questions to be asked there. Okay, nearly 100 deported aliens, Asian aliens, have been moved into a jungle camp in Panama. So basically, Panama built a holding camp in the Darien Gap in the middle of the jungle. Not a very pleasant place to be and nowhere that you can escape to. That's what the Darien Gap's all about. It's supposed to be inhospitable and uncrossable. Now, smugglers have been crossing through it anyway, but that's where they've built this new jungle compound. So we got the Club Guantanamo, or Club Gitmo, in Guantanamo Bay, Cuba. We got the El Salvadorians have offered the use of their prisons for people who are convicted of crimes. Now, that's interesting because one, U.S. citizens cannot be sent to a foreign prison. Like that's not legal. Okay, so if you're a U.S. citizen, you can't be deported even if you're convicted of crimes to a foreign prison. So that's not going to happen. But then a lot of these other people that are being deported from the United States, they're not being convicted of a crime, so they can't be held there. But what this really goes after are people who have been convicted of crimes inside the United States or by other countries, who have been now deported from the United States but designated as too dangerous to just be allowed to go free. So these people who are either convicted in their home country or some other country, and then or convicted in the United States and are now being deported, they can go, if they're not U.S. citizens, they can go to El Salvador. We'll see how much that's used. Whereas the holding area down in Panama is more of a temporary holding location until they can be deported back to their country of origin. So right now it seems like they're mostly like Chinese and other Asian nationalities that are refusing deportation flights. So the United States is moving them out of the United States and moving them down to Panama temporarily. About 300 total have already been moved down to Panama as of the other day, and 100 of them have now been transferred to the Jungle Holding Center. They are definitely moving in deportations and ICE and such. And let's just say it this way, if you're facing possible deportation to a jungle prison for an indeterminate amount of detention, I imagine you might want to start thinking about self-deporting at that point, or getting deported to a Club Gitmo, or getting deported to El Salvador, one of their prisons. I think you'd be thinking, maybe we should just go home. All right, Black History Month has kicked off at the White House, and it's never been quite so interesting. At an event yesterday honoring Tiger Woods, who I think just about everybody recognizes, was at least extraordinary at golf. President Donald Trump, who recently trolled the left by saying, "Long live the king," in a truth tweet, referenced himself, referencing himself, he asked those in attendance at the White House if he should run for president again, to which they started chanting 4 more years, which let's just say the left is in conniptions over. I follow some of the leftist woke people who are chatting and wringing their hands over on Reddit, as well as some other places, and it's interesting to hear their takes on what they see going on. Now, he was saying "Long live the king" in reference to he went after the New York commuter congestion tax. So basically, New York was trying to impose what they did over in London, where they tax you for going to certain areas of the city. So if you drive into a certain area of the city, instead of like being on a toll road, they make like toll areas of the city. So you have to pay these fees. And the people in London absolutely hate it. And that's why they're like literally tearing down all of the cameras. And they've been doing that for months and months. They just keep tearing down all the cameras and destroying them. Accidentally, One interesting thing, though, was at the White House meeting, he did introduce the CEO of Pfizer. Now, Pfizer owns Zoetis for the bird flu pokes for the chickens, and Pfizer you're familiar with. And the crowd who is supporting Donald Trump for most things started booing loudly. And it seemed to take Donald Trump by surprise on that one. Hopefully, he starts getting the message that we are not fans of Pfizer at all, and we want them as far away from the administration as possible. Hopefully, RFK talks some sense into Donald Trump about that one. I like what Donald Trump's doing on a lot of senses, but I do not like seeing him hanging around Pfizer at all or any of these other pharmaceutical companies. All right, friends, those are your news updates for this Friday. If you have anything to share with us, make sure you use the word update somewhere in your comment. If you want to check out another video from this channel, there's one right over here. I'll see you over there, or I'll see you guys later. Steve Poplar of the Poplar Report out.